Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, a free site, bettingangle.us, a free site. Today is November 17th, 2020. Let's talk Canelo against Callum Smith. But first, remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, in my favorites folder right now, I believe I have the blueprint fight for this. It's Callum Smith against Ryder. Right? Ryder, like Canelo, is shorter than Callum Smith by a few inches. Right? Ryder, like Canelo, can dive forward, likes to come in throwing hooks. Ryder, unlike Canelo, has a lot of stamina, was able to keep the intensity going for 12 rounds. Now, I know officially the judges had Callum Smith winning this fight. I want you to look for yourself at the fight. Ryder was a big underdog. Understand the politics of boxing. I personally thought Ryder won. Right? Based on that film and based on the film of Canelo against Liam Smith, who Callum knows well, right? Where Canelo's on his front foot, fighting small, going to the body. I believe Canelo likely beats Callum Smith by stoppage, right? I like Canelo against Callum Smith. I believe that size is going to trip up a lot of people. When they show up for pre-fight publicity shots and stuff like that, given that Callum Smith is unbeaten, hasn't fought close to the level of opposition that Canelo has fought. But given that Callum Smith is unbeaten, I think a lot of people are going to look at the size and they're going to think, oh, wow, maybe this big guy has a chance, right? In my opinion, of all the guys, the elite guys at 168 that Canelo could have picked, he picked the softest touch possible. I believe David Benavidez, big guy who wants a smaller guy to try to stay in the pocket with him. I think that would have been a hard fight for Canelo. Caleb Plant. People should not sleep on Caleb Plant's left hook. Caleb Plant just moves too well for Canelo to keep up with him. Right? You saw Kovalev, of all people, a slugger, not a mover, move against Canelo and win several rounds. Right? Caleb Plant would take that the next step. Right? He'd be moving, but he's a mover who moves for a living. Not only that, that left hook is so sudden, I believe Canelo would have a hard time keeping up with him. Ditto for Billy Joe Saunders. Right? I believe movers would give Canelo a hard time. You force Canelo to reset, he's going to have problems. Well, he doesn't have to worry about a guy resetting in a fight against Callum Smith. Right? So, let me just say this. Smith against Ryder, right, had no clue how to keep Ryder from walking up deep in the pocket. Understand, Ryder's not engaging him before Ryder is close to him. That threw Callum Smith off. That also gave Ryder an opportunity to defend himself. Let me also point out, too, that when a guy is throwing hooks and knows how to tuck his head, if I throw this punch, what's for you to hit if you're a taller guy trying to come from up top? So, there are some questions about the fight, right? One of them is Canelo's state of mind. Canelo has spent months hiring attorneys, suing Golden Boy. Now he's out of that deal. You know, keep in mind, DAZN was supposed to be televising Canelo fights. That whole thing blew up. Now we're hearing that Canelo is negotiating with DAZN to fight Callum Smith. He needs to be careful. Right? He needs to be careful here. Because understand, if Eddie Hearn and Callum Smith win this fight, hey, Callum Smith's going to be the toast of the UK, right? Canelo will have stumbled. Also, you wonder where Canelo's head's at, where he might not have the financial security in this deal that he had in the old deal with Golden Boy. Also, you know how it is with old friends. There was a time where Canelo was tight with Oscar De La Hoya. Now, everyone's smiling for the camera and stuff like that, folks. It took a lawsuit. It took a lawsuit to iron out the kinks in that relationship. Understand, those two guys don't seem to be on each other's Christmas list this year, right? You get the feeling that, there was some emotional turmoil there. So now this is the morning after. Everything feels good in the moment, right? You're telling your girlfriend off and stuff like that. Then you break up. Then the next day, you realize that a breakup took place. I don't know where Canelo's head's at. Let me say this too. Canelo fought Rocky Fielding, a guy who Callum Smith destroyed in one round. Right? Understand, mutual opponent. It took Canelo longer to take care of Rocky Fielding than it did Callum Smith. Right? You saw Canelo up at 175. I know he wins the fight, but let's just say he had to take rounds off against Kovalev. Right? You're wondering about Canelo's complete fitness here. He's gaining weight. We haven't really seen him pushed into the later rounds at 168 yet. Right? Callum Smith has lived at 168, perhaps a bit too long. I don't know how a 6'3" guy is able to fight at 168 for as long as Callum Smith has. Right? But let's just say, if Smith can somehow turn the heat on and get this fight into the latter part of the fight, right? Given all the problems Canelo has had, given the inactivity Canelo has had, given Canelo's lack of experience above 160, right? Who knows what's going to happen? Well, I'm leaning with Canelo in this fight. I think Canelo has fought better than Callum Smith. I think against a mover, he might be exposed. Right? A Plant or a Saunders. Against a guy who's stationary, who's going to try to trade with him, who doesn't know what to do when a smaller guy, continually invades the pocket. In other words, Callum Smith, not gifted at clinching. Callum Smith, not gifted at taking a step back and popping a guy. Callum Smith, not gifted at throwing a jab, forcing a shorter guy to stay outside the pocket. Right? Let's just say John Ryder is deep in the pocket as much as Joe Frazier was against Ali. And Ali was a guy who knew how to clinch you. If Canelo, who can move his upper body, just bobs and weaves a little bit, comes inside and throws to the body a lot more than John Ryder does, I think he gets a stoppage. The bet I'm recommending is Canelo. By stoppage. Right? By stoppage. Understand, Canelo's one of the hardest punchers pound for pound in boxing. He trains with heavyweight Frank Sanchez, who, unprompted during a recent interview, said Canelo hits like a heavyweight. If you go to gamblersadvisory.com, you'll see footage of Canelo in the ring against heavyweight Frank Sanchez. And in the footage, Canelo is cutting off the ring. A guy who's about to fight at 168. Right? Don't get too carried away too by height. Right? Shorter guys, historically, even against great champions, have given them trouble at the highest weights. Right? Sam Langford the Boston Tar Baby, right? They weren't PC back in the day. Gave Jack Johnson, according to reports, all he could handle. Right? This was before Jack becomes world heavyweight champion. But let's just say Jack was not in a hurry to see Sam Langford again. Right? Understand, Mike Tyson, Rocky Marciano, they weren't that tall, folks. Canelo hits like a heavyweight. Callum Smith is a puncher, might not be the puncher Canelo is. If John Ryder was more of a body puncher, I believe it would have been clear to everyone that he beat Callum Smith. I thought he beat Callum Smith as it was. So I believe Canelo gets the stoppage. Let's remember, no man has gone the distance against Canelo above 164 pounds when he fought Chavez Jr. Right? Rocky Fielding stopped. Kovalev stopped. Kovalev felt his power. You notice Kovalev is on his back foot for much of that fight. Right here, he's fighting a guy who cannot stop him from getting in the pocket. Understand, too, that second Golovkin fight, different from the first one. Canelo decides to be on his front foot in that fight. If he fights that fight, look at how he punished Golovkin's body in that match. If he brings that strategy, and if his head's clear, if he's not thinking about lawsuits and lost friendships and inactivity due to COVID, if he's focused on this fight, I think he gets the stoppage. I like Canelo by KO hedged with Callum Smith to win because you're getting good odds on the other side of the play. That's if they can iron out the kinks to make this fight happen. Let's also be real here. The fight is happening in the United States, right? It's happening in Texas. When Canelo fights in Jerry Jones's stadium, there's an open question on who owns the stadium, Jerry or Canelo. Canelo has already drawn more than 50,000 people to that stadium. Now, they're still negotiating the terms of the contract, but pay very close attention to the venue, right? If it's in Texas, Callum Smith is going to have to deal with about 50,000 people cheering for Saul Alvarez. Now, I know, social distancing, they'll space out the crowd and stuff like that. But understand, that stadium holds a lot of people, like 90,000 people or something like that. And so even with social distancing, they're going to have a significant crowd there. And understand the buzz on the fight in Texas for Canelo is going to be obvious to both fighters, right? Callum Smith is going to be a fish out of water. I believe Callum Smith is going to privately know, since he doesn't have a stiff jab, he's going to need a KO of Canelo to win the fight. Folks, Canelo has never been KO'd. Understand, he's fought some heavy-handed guys like Golovkin, like Kovalev. He has, like James Kirkland, he has never been KO'd. I think Canelo gets the stoppage here. I'll hedge the play with Callum Smith simply to win, but you need to understand the risk involved. Let's say Canelo is rusty. Let's say the timing is off. However big his punch, let's say his timing is off, right? Understand, life's been different for all of us this year, right? COVID has changed the game. Guys can't spar, right? Going to the gym's a chore. People don't want to be out in public, right? You throw in lawsuits and stuff like that, it can get complicated. If Canelo is not Canelo, if Callum Smith is ready to go the distance, understand Callum Smith has never been KO'd. If Callum Smith is ready to go the distance, like Golovkin did twice against Canelo, like Danny Jacobs did against Canelo, If the fight goes the distance, whoever wins, you lose it all. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section of this video. The Ryder-Smith fight, where I thought Ryder got jobbed because he was a big underdog without the connections in boxing, can be found in my favorites folder. Thanks for stopping by.